"How you don't recognize me? I'm your son," said the boy to the millionaire in the cemetery. Julian Sterling was kneeling before the marble tomb, the red roses trembling in his hands as the torrential rain soaked his expensive suit. After 15 years avoiding that place, he finally found the courage to visit the resting place of Sarah, the only woman he had ever truly loved. It was then that a child's voice made him freeze completely. As he raised his gaze, he saw a boy of about 14 standing beside him, completely drenched with simple torn clothes clinging to his thin body. The boy's intense green eyes were identical to his own. "You don't recognize me?" "I'm your son," said the boy, with a voice that mixed determination and despair. Julian felt the world spin. The roses slipped from his hands and fell onto the wet headstone. "What are you talking about?" he managed to murmur, struggling to process the words. "My name is Ethan. Ethan Miller. My mother was Sarah Miller." The boy pointed to the tomb. "She always told me my father was a very important, very rich man, but that he couldn't take care of me." The businessman shook his head violently, the raindrops mixing with tears that were beginning to well up. "That's impossible. Sarah never told me anything about a child." Ethan pulled a crumpled, wet piece of paper from the pocket of his torn pants. "This is my birth certificate. Her name is here, and in the space for the father there's just a dash. But she always talked about you. She described your green eyes, your height, even the small scar you have on your forehead." Julian unconsciously touched the almost imperceptible scar above his left eyebrow. Very few people knew about that childhood mark. "How do you know about—" "She told me stories about you every day. She said you liked red roses because it was the first flower you ever gave her. She said you had a big company but that you were sad inside." Julian's heart raced. Sarah really did love red roses. He remembered perfectly their first meeting when he showed up at the door of her simple house with a bouquet just like the one he had just dropped. "Where do you live? Who takes care of you?" he asked, still struggling to accept the possibility. "I live with Mrs. Gable, a lady who knew my mother, but she's very sick and can't support me anymore. That's why I came looking for you." The rain continued relentlessly, but neither of them moved. Julian studied every feature of the boy's face. Besides the identical green eyes, there was something familiar about the shape of the nose, the line of the chin. "If you really are, if this is true, why did Sarah never tell me?" Ethan lowered his head, water running down his wet hair. "She said she tried to tell you once, but you were too busy with business. She said you told her you didn't want complications in your life." A painful memory began to emerge in Julian's mind. He vaguely remembered Sarah trying to have a serious conversation with him during their last meetings. But back then, his company was going through a critical phase, and he truly had no time for deep relationships. "When was the last time you saw your mother?" 3 years ago. She got very sick and asked Mrs. Gable to take care of me. Before she passed, she gave me this." The boy pulled a small photo from his pocket. In the faded image, Julian saw himself 15 years younger, embracing Sarah in a city park. "She always said that one day you would come looking for me, that when you were ready to be a father, your heart would bring you to her." Ethan pointed again at the tomb. "I think today is that day." Julian took the photo with trembling hands. He remembered that sunny Sunday perfectly. They had spent the whole afternoon talking about dreams and plans for the future. It was one of the happiest days of his life. "Why did you come here today? How did you know I'd be at the cemetery?" "I didn't. I come here every Sunday to talk to my mother. It was just a coincidence to run into you." But Julian didn't believe in coincidences. He looked again at the drenched boy and felt something stir deep in his chest, a mix of guilt, regret, and a strange sense of completeness. "Are you hungry? Are you cold?" Ethan nodded timidly. "Come with me. Let's get out of this rain and talk properly." In the car, driving in silence, Julian watched the boy in the rearview mirror. Ethan looked out the window with curiosity, but without the awe most children would show upon entering a luxury car. There was a premature maturity in those green eyes. "Ethan, how do you survive? Does Mrs. Gable give you money?" "I work a few jobs. I carry groceries for the ladies at the market, wash cars at traffic lights, sometimes I help at Mr. Miller's warehouse. The social reality of those words hit Julian like a punch to the gut. While he had been amassing wealth, a boy who could be his son was struggling to survive on the streets. Arriving home, Julian led Ethan to the kitchen. His housekeeper, Mrs. Higgins, who had worked for him for over 20 years, nearly dropped her cup when she saw the boy. "Good heavens," she exclaimed, looking back and forth between Julian and Ethan. "It's like you in miniature." "Mrs. Higgins, this is Ethan. He'll be staying here tonight. Could you prepare something for him to eat and get the guest room ready?" Of course," she replied, still gaping at the resemblance. "Boy, you're soaked. I'll get some dry clothes from the closet." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. While Ethan took a hot shower, Julian called his personal lawyer. "Arthur, I need an urgent favor. I want you to investigate a woman named Sarah Miller. She passed away about 3 years ago." "You got it, Julian. But can I ask the reason for the investigation?" "It's complicated. Just do a thorough search and bring me everything you find." The next morning, Julian woke to the smell of strong coffee coming from the kitchen. He found Ethan helping Mrs. Higgins prepare breakfast. "Good morning," said the boy with a shy smile. "Did you sleep well?" "It was the best night's sleep of my life. The bed is so soft, I thought I was dreaming." Mrs. Higgins whispered in Julian's ear. "This boy has manners, Mr. Sterling. He's not like those ill-bred street kids. There's something special about him." During breakfast, Ethan told more about his life. He talked about the jobs he did, about Mrs. Gable, who was in the public hospital, about how he visited his mother's grave every Sunday. "Ethan, do you go to school?" The boy lowered his head in shame. "I stopped studying last year. I needed to work to help Mrs. Gable with the medicine." Julian felt a stab of guilt. If he really was that child's father, he had failed unforgivably. The phone rang. It was Arthur with the first results of the investigation. "Julian, I found information about Sarah Miller. She did exist and died 3 years ago from cancer. She worked as a seamstress and lived modestly on the outskirts of the city." "And about a son?" "Yes. There's a record of a son named Ethan Miller, born 14 years ago. On the birth certificate, the father field is blank. Anything else?" "One interesting thing. In her final years, there are records of monthly deposits into her bank account, always for $1,000, always on the same day." Julian felt the floor sway beneath his feet. Where did those deposits come from? "I'm still investigating, but it appears they came from a corporate account." After hanging up, Julian was silent for long minutes. Ethan appeared in the living room wearing clean clothes that Mrs. Higgins had provided. "Can I ask a question?" said the boy. "Of course. Why did you never get married? Why don't you have children?" The question was like a knife to the heart. Julian had always avoided serious relationships after Sarah. Something inside him shut down when she disappeared from his life without explanation. "It's complicated, Ethan. My mum used to say you were afraid to truly love. That's why you preferred to stay alone rather than risk getting hurt." The boy's words were exactly what Sarah used to say during their last meetings. It was as if she were there, through the child, showing truths he had always refused to see. The phone rang again. It was Arthur, this time with information that would change everything. "Julian, I found out where the deposits were coming from. It was from your own company's account. Someone with access to the financial systems was making these transfers monthly." "What do you mean? Who?" "You need to come to the office. I brought documents you need to see." In Arthur's office, Julian was faced with a stack of documents that revealed a devastating truth. The transfers were authorized by his own digital signature, but he didn't remember making any of them. "Julian, are you sure you didn't know about this boy?" "I'm sure I don't remember. But lately, some memories are coming back. Fragments of conversations, situations I blocked from my mind." Arthur showed more documents. "There's something else. The transfers started exactly 9 months after the last recorded contact between you and Sarah Miller." Julian studied the dates. It all made sense mathematically, but his mind remained blank about that period. "I want to do a DNA test. I need to be sure." I've already arranged it. There's a private clinic that can do the test today and have the result in 24 hours. At the clinic, while genetic material was being collected from both, Ethan asked, "Are you afraid of the result?" "Are you?" "A little," Julian admitted. "And you?" "No, I already know the answer. I've always known." "How can you be so sure?" "Because when I look at you, it's like looking into a mirror of the future. And when you look at me, I see in your eyes the same affection my mom had when she talked about you." That night, Julian could barely sleep. Ethan, on the other hand, slept peacefully in the guest room as if he were finally home. The next morning, Mrs. Higgins commented during breakfast, "Mr. Sterling, that boy has gestures just like yours, the way he holds the cup, the way he tilts his head when he's thinking. It's remarkable." They were details Julian had also noticed. Ethan had mannerisms and quirks that seemed hereditary. The test result arrived at noon. Arthur called with a tense voice, "Julian, you need to sit down to hear this." "Just say it, Arthur." "The test confirms paternity with 99.9% certainty. Ethan Miller is indeed your son." Julian collapsed into the office chair. All the doubts, all the uncertainties vanished in an instant. Ethan was his son, his blood, his responsibility. But along with the confirmation came an avalanche of guilt. 14 years lost. A child who grew up without a father, struggling to survive while he accumulated wealth. "There's one more thing," Arthur continued. "I found a letter. Sarah wrote to you shortly before she passed away." "A letter?" "It was with her documents. Mrs. Gable kept all her belongings. The letter was sealed, addressed to you." Julian asked Arthur to bring the letter immediately. As he waited, he looked out the window and saw Ethan in the garden, talking animatedly with Mrs. Higgins about the plants. The letter arrived an hour later. With trembling hands, Julian opened the envelope, yellowed with time. "My dear Julian, if you are reading this letter, it means our son has finally found you. I always knew this day would come. I want you to know that I don't blame you for anything. I tried to tell you about the pregnancy, but you were going through a difficult time at the company. When I realized my presence was causing you stress, I chose to step away. Ethan is the most precious thing life has given me. He has your generous heart, your intelligence, but also your stubbornness. I raised him talking about you every day, because I wanted him to know he has a father who loves him, even from a distance. I know you made the monthly deposits. Yes, I found out. Thank you for that. It wasn't your obligation, but even without consciously knowing about Ethan, your heart was already taking care of him. Now that I am leaving, my only request is that you give our son what I couldn't: stability and education, and most of all, a father's love. He has big dreams, Julian. He wants to be an engineer like you. He wants to build houses for poor people. He has an immense heart. Don't blame yourself for the lost time, or celebrate the time you still have ahead. With eternal love, Sarah P.S. Ethan doesn't know about the monthly deposits. To him, we managed to survive only with my sewing work. Let him keep thinking that, at least for now. Julian finished reading with eyes full of tears. Sarah had always been a wise, generous woman. Even dying, she was still protecting everyone's feelings. At that moment, Ethan entered the office. "Mrs. Higgins said you wanted to talk to me." Julian folded the letter carefully and stood up. "Ethan, the test results came." The boy grew tense, preparing for any answer. "You were right. I really am your father." Ethan showed no surprise. He just smiled with a deep peace in his green eyes. "I knew. I always knew." Julian knelt to be at the boy's height and pulled him into a hug. It was the first time in 14 years that he had hugged his son. "Forgive me, Ethan. Forgive me for not being there all these years." "There's nothing to forgive, Dad. My mom always said everything happens at the right time. Maybe you weren't ready to be my father before, but you are now." The child's wisdom was overwhelming. Julian felt he was learning more about life in those few days than in all his 42 years. "Ethan, I want you to live here with me, forever. I want you to go back to school. I want to give you everything you deserve." "And Mrs. Gable? She's alone in the hospital." Another lesson in humanity from that boy. Even in the hope of a better life, He didn't forget who cared for him in difficult times. "We'll take care of Mrs. Gable too. I'll arrange the best treatment for her." At the hospital, when he met Mrs. Gable, Julian completely understood why Sarah had entrusted Ethan to that woman. Even weakened by age and illness, her eyes shone with kindness. "So you are my boy's father," she said, holding Julian's hand with surprising strength. "Sarah always said you two would meet one day." "Mrs. Gable, I want to thank you for taking care of Ethan. How can I repay you?" "You are already repaying me, my son, by giving Ethan what he always wanted, a father." Mrs. Gable told stories about Ethan that broke Julian's heart. The boy saved money to buy flowers for his mother's grave. He studied alone, using used books he was given. He dreamed of building a nice house for Mrs. Gable. "He is special, Mr. Julian. He has a light inside him that I don't see in many children." Julian Sterling immediately arranged for Mrs. Gable to be transferred to a private hospital with the best available treatment. Ethan Miller was overjoyed to learn that the woman who raised him would receive proper care. Back home, Julian noticed how Ethan's presence was transforming the atmosphere. The mansion that had always seemed cold and empty now had life, laughter, the noise of a child. "Dad, can I ask you a question about my mom?" It was the first time Ethan had called him Dad naturally. "Of course, son." "Did you really love each other?" Julian thought carefully before answering. "Yes, Ethan. Your mother was the woman I loved most in my life. I still do." "Why did you separate?" "It was my fault. I was too focused on work, too closed off to love. By the time I realized what I was losing, it was too late. My mom was never angry with you. She always spoke of you fondly. Your mother was a very special person. You got the best of her." That night, Julian tucked Ethan in for the first time. The boy was in his own bed, in the room that was now officially his. "Dad, can I tell you a secret?" "Of course. I used to dream about you. Even without knowing you, I dreamed that one day you would appear and we'd be a family. And what was I like in those dreams? Exactly like you are now. Tall, with green eyes, kind of serious but caring on the inside." Julian kissed his son's forehead and left the room with his heart overflowing with emotion. For the first time in years, he felt complete. But the new reality also brought practical challenges. Ethan needed to return to school, but was behind in his learning. Julian hired private tutors to help him catch up on lost time. "I don't want special treatment for being your son," Ethan said during one of the lessons. "I want to earn things on my own merit." Yet another display of the strong personality he had inherited. Julian felt pride growing in his chest each day. The adjustment wasn't always easy. Ethan wasn't used to luxury and felt out of place in some of Julian's social circles, but he adapted with surprising ease. "Dad, your business friends are very different from you." "How so?" "They only talk about money. You talk about dreams." The boy's sharp observation made Julian reflect on his own friendships and professional relationships. Perhaps he had been surrounded by the wrong people for years. 3 months after Ethan's arrival, Julian received a call that would change his perspective once again. It was from a social worker. "Mr. Sterling, we learned through Mrs. Gable that you found your son. We have information that might interest you." "What kind of information?" "There are other cases similar to Ethan's. Children who were abandoned by fathers who didn't know of their existence." Julian was intrigued. At the social services office, he learned 3 stories similar to Ethan's. Successful men who discovered too late about children they had unknowingly fathered. "It's more common than you think," the social worker explained. "Women who prefer to raise their children alone rather than complicate the fathers' lives." The information planted a seed in Julian's mind. Perhaps he could use his experience to help other families reconnect. "How can I help?" he asked. "Would you consider creating some kind of program? Something that helps identify these cases and facilitates reunions?" Julian left the meeting with an idea brewing in his head. He talked to Ethan about it that night. "Dad, I think it's a wonderful idea. How many children must be waiting to find their parents? Would you be willing to help me with this? Tell your story to other families? Of course, if our story can help other people, it should be shared." Ethan's emotional maturity continued to impress Julian. At 14, the boy displayed wisdom that many adults lacked. Julian began structuring an assistance program for family reconnection. Not a formal institution, but a support network that would use his influence and resources to identify similar cases. The first case they handled was that of a 12-year-old girl searching for her doctor father. Through contacts in the medical community, Julian managed to locate the man, who truly did not know of his daughter's existence. Watching that reunion was like reliving our own, Ethan said after the meeting. The same emotion, the same surprise, the same instant love. With each resolved case, Julian felt more purpose in his life. The work with Ethan had not only given him a son, but also a sense of mission. Dear listener, if you are enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we are just starting out. Now, continuing. 6 months after finding Ethan, Julian received an unexpected phone call. It was from a woman named Diane. "Mr. Sterling, I saw on television the program you are doing to reunite families. I need to speak with you." "About what, ma'am?" "About your son Ethan. I have information you need to know." Julian was intrigued and scheduled a meeting. Diane was a woman of about 50, well-dressed, who seemed nervous. "Mr. Sterling, I was Sarah's best friend. I was with her in her final days. It's good to meet you." Sarah spoke of her friends. "There is something she asked me to tell you, but only if Ethan was well cared for and happy." Julian felt a chill in his stomach. "What would that be?" "Sarah didn't leave your life by chance. She discovered something about your company, about people close to you who were doing wrong things." "How so?" "She worked in accounting, remember? She discovered someone was embezzling money from the company. When she tried to tell you, this person threatened her." Julian was shocked. Sarah had never mentioned working at his company. "Who was this person?" "Your partner at the time, Richard Vance. He discovered Sarah was pregnant and used it to blackmail her. He said if she told about the embezzlement or the pregnancy, he would fabricate a story that she was stealing from the company." Julian's world crumbled again. Richard Vance had been his best friend and partner for years. He sold his share of the company 10 years ago and moved to another city. "Did Sarah accept the blackmail?" "She left the company and never contacted you again. She raised Ethan alone, working as a seamstress, but always loving you." "And the monthly deposits I was making?" Diane smiled sadly. "Those deposits weren't yours, Mr. Sterling. They were from Richard. He made them using your account as a disguise so that if you ever discovered Ethan, you would think you were already helping." Julian felt a rage he hadn't felt in years. Richard had not only stolen from his company, but had also destroyed his chance to be a father from the start. "Why didn't Sarah tell the truth before she passed?" "She said she didn't want you to carry resentment, that she preferred you remember her with love, not with anger over the situation." That night Julian told Ethan everything. The boy listened in silence, absorbing every detail. "Dad, does this change anything?" "How so?" "Does knowing the truth about the past change what we have now?" Julian looked at his son with growing admiration. "No, Ethan. It changes nothing of what we have now." "Then it's not worth being angry. My mother was right. It's better to focus on what we can build together than on what we lost." Ethan's wisdom always surprised Julian. At 14, the boy already understood concepts of forgiveness and overcoming that many adults take decades to learn. But Julian couldn't simply forget. The injustice of what Richard had done consumed his thoughts. He decided to hire a private detective to investigate the whereabouts of his former partner. The detective returned 2 weeks later with disturbing information. Richard had used the stolen money to build a real estate empire in the capital. He was rich, successful, and apparently without remorse. "Dad, can I give my opinion?" asked Ethan when he learned the results. "Of course." "Why are you going after him? To get money back, to punish him, or to feel avenged?" "I don't know, Ethan, maybe a little of each." "And will that bring my mother back? Will it recover the years we lost?" Julian stopped to think. Ethan was right, as always. It won't. Then why spend our energy on anger when we can use it to help more families like ours? In that moment, Julian understood that Ethan wasn't just his son, he was his life teacher. his moral guide. "You're right, son, let's focus on what we can build together. But Dad, there is one thing we can do about Richard." "What?" "We can forgive him, not for him, but for us, so we don't carry this hurt in our hearts." Julian hugged his son, impressed by the emotional depth of that child. Ethan had been raised by a wise mother and had developed a generous heart despite all the difficulties. The family reconnection program began to grow larger. Success stories spread, and Julian received requests for help from all over the country. "Dad, I think we should create something more structured," suggested Ethan during a dinner. "How so?" "A place where these families can meet, talk, support each other. Not a company, but like one big family." The idea was brilliant. Julian began planning a community center dedicated to family reconnection, a place where not only parents and children would meet, but where they could rebuild relationships. "What should we call this place?" asked Julian. "How about Reunion House?" suggested Ethan. "Perfect." The construction of Reunion House took 8 months. Julian invested a significant amount of his fortune in the project, but he had never felt more professionally fulfilled. On the opening day, hundreds of families who had reconnected through the program were present. Ethan cut the ribbon alongside Julian, symbolizing the partnership between father and son. "Dad, there's one more surprise," said Ethan during the ceremony. "What?" "Mrs. Gable is doing much better. The doctors said she can leave the hospital." "What wonderful news." "And I was thinking, how about she comes to live with us? Our house is big, and she took care of me when I needed it most." Julian smiled. Ethan always thought of others before himself. "Of course, son, Mrs. Gable will be most welcome." The arrival of Mrs. Gable completed the transformation of Julian's house. What was once a cold, silent mansion became a home full of life, conversation, and laughter. "Mr. Julian," said Mrs. Gable one night, "do you know that Ethan always knew you would come for him?" "How so?" "Since he was little, he said he would find his father one day, that he felt it in his heart. And he always said that when it happened, you would do important things together." Julian was moved. The connection between him and Ethan transcended rational explanations. It was as if they were souls who already knew each other, before even their first meeting. 2 years after the meeting at the cemetery, Julian and Ethan returned to Sarah's grave. This time it wasn't raining. The sun shone through the trees, creating an atmosphere of peace. "Mom," said Ethan, placing red roses on the headstone, "we did it. Dad and I are a real family now, and we are helping other families too." Julian also spoke to Sarah, silently in his thoughts. He thanked her for raising such a special son, asked for forgiveness for the lost years, and promised to care for Lucas forever. "Dad, can I tell you a secret?" said Lucas as they were leaving the cemetery. "Of course." "Sometimes I feel like my mom is proud of us, as if she could see everything we're doing." Roberto smiled. He too felt Mariana's presence in special moments, as if she was still watching over the family from afar. The Reunion House became a national reference for family reconnection. Roberto was invited to give lectures, appear on television programs, and write articles about responsible fatherhood. But what made him proudest was seeing Lucas grow into an honest, generous, and wise young man. At 16, the boy became a spokesperson for the program, sharing his story to inspire other families. "Dad, I have some news," Lucas said one day, coming home from school with a radiant smile. "What news?" "I passed the early SATs for engineering, with a full scholarship." Roberto felt his chest burst with pride. Lucas had not only overcome his educational gap, but had excelled among the best students in the country. "I'm so proud of you, son. It's the result of everything you provided for me. Education, love, stability. Now I want to use that to build a better world." At Lucas's engineering graduation 3 years later, Roberto cried with emotion, seeing his son receive his diploma as the top of his class. The abandoned boy he had found at the cemetery had become a brilliant and successful man. "Dad," Lucas said during the graduation speech, "I want to dedicate this achievement to the man who taught me it's never too late to start being a father, and to the woman who taught me that true love overcomes any obstacle." The audience was moved by his words. Roberto and Mrs. Gable cried with pride in the front row. Lucas decided to work at the Reunion House itself, using his engineering knowledge to expand the project. He proposed building units in other cities, creating a national network of family support. "Dad, I want our work to reach every child waiting to find their parents, every parent who doesn't know they have a child waiting for them." The project expanded beyond expectations. In 5 years, the reunion house had facilitated over 1,000 family reunions across the country. Roberto, now 50, felt more fulfilled than he ever imagined possible. The financial success he had so pursued in his youth seemed insignificant compared to the emotional wealth Lucas had brought into his life. "Son, there's something I want to tell you," Roberto said one Sunday afternoon in their home's garden. "What is it, Dad?" "Sometimes I think about what my life would have been like if you hadn't appeared at that cemetery." "And what conclusion did you reach?" "That I would be a very rich man, but very poor at the same time. Rich in money, but poor in love, in purpose, in happiness." Lucas smiled with the wisdom he always showed. "My mom always said that the most important people in our lives sometimes arrive when we least expect them, but exactly when we need them most." She was right, as always. At that moment, Mrs. Gable appeared in the garden with a tray of lemonade. "Are you two still talking philosophy?" she teased. "Talking about gratitude," Lucas corrected. "About how sometimes the hardest things in life lead us to the most wonderful ones." Mrs. Gable sat with them in the shade of the oak tree. "Lucas was always like this," she said to Roberto. "Since he was little, he saw the good side of the most difficult situations." "It's a gift he inherited from his mother," replied Roberto. "And perfected with the presence of his father," Mrs. Gable added. The three sat in comfortable silence, watching the garden that had become a symbol of their lives, a place that was once empty and formal, but with care and love had transformed into a space full of life and beauty. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out, now continuing. 5 years after Ethan's graduation, Julian received a phone call that left him intrigued. It was from an investigative journalist. "Mr. Sterling, I'm working on a story about Richard Vance. I know you were partners in the past." Julian felt his stomach tighten. He hadn't thought about Richard in years. "May I ask the reason for the story?" "Richard is being investigated for several financial irregularities. It seems the pattern of behavior he had with you was repeated with other partners over the years." Julian fell silent, processing the information. "Mr. Sterling, would you be willing to talk about what he did to your company?" "Thank you for reaching out, but I'd prefer not to get involved." "But sir, your statement could help other victims." Julian thought of Ethan, of Mrs. Gable, of everything they had built together. "Let me talk with my family first." That night, Julian told Ethan about the journalist's call. "What do you think I should do?" he asked. Ethan thought carefully before answering. "Dad, remember what we talked about years ago? About not wasting energy on anger?" "I remember. But now this isn't about anger or revenge. It's about justice for other people who might be suffering like we did." Julian was impressed by the maturity of the analysis. "Do you think I should talk to the journalist? I think you should do what your conscience tells you. But remember, telling the truth isn't about punishing Richard. It's about protecting other families." The next day, Julian called the journalist and told the whole story, not out of bitterness, but because other children might be growing up without fathers because of Richard's actions. The story was published 2 weeks later and caused a major stir. Several other victims of Richard came forward, and he ended up being indicted for multiple financial crimes. "Dad, how do you feel knowing Richard will pay for his mistakes?" asked Ethan. "I feel peace," replied Julian, surprised by his own answer. "Not joy or satisfaction, just peace in knowing we did the right thing." "And that's how it should be," Ethan agreed. "Justice isn't about revenge. It's about protecting other people." A few weeks later, Julian received an unexpected letter. It was from Richard, from prison. "Julian, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need to say I'm sorry for what I did. You were always a loyal friend, and I betrayed you in the worst way possible. It's no excuse, but I was desperate at the time. I had gambling debts I couldn't pay. When I saw the chance to take money from the company, I thought it would be temporary. Regarding Sarah and Ethan, I feel even worse. I tore a family apart out of pure cowardice and selfishness. I can't undo the harm I caused, but I want you to know you are in my prayers. Use this letter as a confession in any legal proceedings you need. It's the least I can do. Richard. Julian showed the letter to Ethan and Mrs. Gable. What do you think? I think he's truly remorseful, said Ethan. But remorse doesn't undo the consequences. And what do we do with this? Ethan thought for a moment. We forgive him, but we don't forget the lessons we learned, and we use our story to help others avoid going through the same thing. Mrs. Gable nodded in approval. This boy continues to amaze me with his wisdom. Julian agreed. Ethan had become not only his son, but his moral and emotional counselor. The reunion house continued to grow. Ethan, now a graduate engineer, brought technological innovations that made locating separated families even easier. Dad, I have a proposal, said Ethan during a board meeting. Go ahead. What if we expand the concept? Not just reunions between parents and children, but also between siblings, grandparents and grandchildren, families separated by various circumstances. The proposal was approved unanimously. The project transformed into the Family Reunion Center, handling increasingly complex and emotional cases. In one of the most memorable cases, they helped an 80-year-old grandmother find the grandchildren she hadn't seen in 20 years. The reunion was so emotional it became a national documentary. Do you know what the most rewarding part of our work is? Asked Julian during an interview. It's not just the reunions, replied Ethan. It's seeing that every reconnected family becomes a multiplier of love. They help other families create support networks and spread kindness. Ethan's answer impressed the interviewer and went viral on social media. Julian was proud not only of his son's professional success, but mainly of the honest and generous man he had become. Ethan, can I ask a personal question? Said Julian one evening. Of course, Dad. Don't you feel like dating, getting married, having your own family? Ethan smiled. Dad, I already have a family. You, Mrs. Gable, all the families we help. When the time for romantic love comes, it will come naturally. But don't you feel pressured? You're 26. Dad, I learned from our story that the important things in life happen at the right time. You found me at the exact moment we were both ready to be a family. Another lesson in wisdom from Ethan. Julian continued learning from his son every day. 2 months later, Ethan came home with a different smile on his face. Dad, there's something I want to tell you. What? I met someone special. Julian felt his heart race with emotion. Tell me everything. She's a psychologist who works with abandoned children. I met her during one of our cases. She's special. What's her name? Claire. And Dad. She was also adopted as a child. She understands our mission on a very deep level. Julian was moved. It seemed life kept putting the right people in Ethan's path. When do I get to meet her? How about Sunday? I thought I'd bring her over for lunch with us. Mrs. Gable was thrilled with the news. She spent the whole week planning a special lunch to meet the daughter-in-law. On Sunday, when Claire arrived, Julian immediately understood why Ethan was interested in her. She was a simple woman, naturally beautiful, with kind eyes that reminded him of Sarah's. Mr. Sterling, Ethan talks about you all the time, she said during lunch. It's inspiring to see your relationship. All the credit goes to Ethan. He taught me how to be a father. And I learned how to be a son, added Ethan, smiling. Claire fit perfectly into the family. She had the same generosity of spirit, the same desire to help others. Within a few months, she was volunteering at the reunion house. Dad, Claire had a brilliant idea, said Ethan one evening. What? What if we create a specific program for children who were adopted but want to learn about their biological families? That's more delicate, considered Julian. It involves complex legal issues. Exactly, said Claire, who had joined the conversation. We need specialized professionals to do this the right way, respecting all parties involved. The idea evolved into a program called Roots, which helped adopted people find information about their origins when they wished and when it was legally appropriate. The first case was emotional. An 18-year-old girl raised by wonderful adoptive parents just wanted to meet her biological mother to thank her for the life she was given. The reunion was carefully mediated by Claire and resulted in a beautiful friendship between all parties. The biological mother got to know the daughter she had kept secret for so long, and the adoptive parents felt valued by the gratitude of the biological family. "You are creating something truly revolutionary," commented a family court judge during a visit to the project. "This work should be a national model." Julian and Ethan exchanged proud looks. What began as a personal story was turning into public policy. 3 years after meeting Claire, Ethan asked Julian in private, "Dad, I want to ask for your blessing to marry Claire." Julian hugged his son with tears in his eyes. "Son, you don't need my blessing. You are already a grown man, capable of making your own decisions, but you have all my support and my joy. I want your blessing because you are my father, my role model, my hero. Your approval is important to me. Then you have my complete blessing. Claire is a wonderful woman, perfect for you." The wedding was held in the garden of the house where Julian and Ethan lived. The ceremony was simple but full of meaning. Mrs. Gable, now 80 years old but still sharp and active, was Ethan's godmother. "If your mother were here, she would be so proud," whispered Mrs. Gable in Ethan's ear before the ceremony. "She is here," replied Ethan, touching his chest. "She is in my heart and in my father's." At the reception, Julian gave an emotional speech. "Ethan, when you appeared in my life at that cemetery, I thought I was gaining a son. I didn't know I was also gaining a teacher, a friend, a partner in the most important life mission I've ever had." The audience gave a standing ovation. Many of the people present were families who had reconnected through the reunion house. "Claire, welcome officially to our family. You've been a part of it for a long time, but now it's official," continued Julian. Claire was moved and thanked them for accepting her with so much affection. 2 years after the wedding, Ethan and Claire gave Julian the best news of his life. He was going to be a grandfather. "Dad, there's something we need to tell you," said Ethan one evening. Julian already suspected by their radiant expressions. "Claire is pregnant." Julian burst into tears of joy. He was going to be a grandfather. The family that began with 2 men meeting in a cemetery kept growing. "How did Mrs. Gable react to the news?" he asked. "She said she can now pass in peace, knowing the family is complete," replied Claire, laughing. During the pregnancy, Julian surprised himself with his own anxiety and expectation. He was more nervous than when Ethan was a child. "Dad, you're more anxious than we are," joked Ethan. "It's just that now I know what unconditional love means. I know what it is to want to protect someone more than your own life. And you will feel that multiplied by 1,000 when you hold your grandson," said Mrs. Gable wisely. She was right. When the baby was born, a boy named Leo, in honor of Ethan's friend who had appeared in the example that inspired his story, Julian felt an emotion even deeper than when he found Ethan. "Hi, Leo," he whispered, holding his grandson for the first time. "I'm your grandpa. I will love you forever." The baby opened his eyes, green like those of the whole lineage, and seemed to look directly at Julian. "Look at that," said Ethan. "He has the family eyes." "The family eyes," repeated Julian, moved. Leo grew up in an environment of total love. He had 3 adults completely devoted to his well-being: his parents, his grandfather, and his great-grandmother, Mrs. Gable. "This boy is going to be very spoiled," Claire would joke. "Spoiled with love, never with things," Julian corrected. "I want him to learn the same values Ethan learned." Ethan agreed completely. Even with abundant financial resources, they raised Leo with social awareness and generosity. By age 3, Leo was already joining the visits to the reunion house. He played with other children who were going through the family reconnection process. "Grandpa, why are those children crying?" Leo asked during one visit. "Because they're happy, my grandson. They're reuniting with people they love. Like how you and Daddy reunited," Julian smiled. It was time to start telling the story to the next generation. "It's a long story, Leo. Do Do you want Grandpa to tell it? The boy's green eyes shone with curiosity. Yes, Julian began to narrate the story of the meeting at the cemetery, adapting it for a child's understanding. Leo listened, fascinated. And then you became a real family. Then we became a real family. And now you are part of that family too. Leo hugged his grandfather tightly. Grandpa, I love you so much. I love you too, my grandson, more than anything in this life. When Leo turned 5, Mrs. Gable was 90 years old and began to show signs that her earthly journey was coming to an end, still lucid and loving but physically very frail. Mr. Sterling, she called one afternoon, may I speak with you? Of course, Mrs. Gable, always. I want to thank you for the best years of my life. Taking care of Ethan was my mission, but living with you all has been my reward. Julian held her hand tenderly. Mrs. Gable, you are part of this family. You always will be. I know. And I know that when I'm gone, Leo will have the same opportunities Ethan had, the same education, the same love. You can be absolutely certain of that. Then I can leave in peace. Mrs. Gable passed away in her sleep 3 months later. It was a moment of great sadness, but also of gratitude for having had the privilege of sharing life with such a special person. At the funeral, Ethan said, Mrs. Gable wasn't just the woman who raised me. She was the grandmother Leo knew, the second mother Claire gained, the friend my father found. She was the heart of this family, Julian added. She fulfilled her mission perfectly. She took care of Ethan when I couldn't, and she taught us all how to love without asking for anything in return. Mrs. Gable's grave was placed next to Sarah's grave, in the same cemetery where it all began. Julian found it poetic that the 2 most important women in Ethan's formation now rested side by side. Leo, even though young, understood that Mrs. Gable had gone to take care of the great-grandmother Sarah he had never met. Grandpa, did Mrs. Gable go to find Grandma Sarah? Yes, my grandson. Now they are together, watching over us from heaven. And are they proud of our family? I'm sure they are. Life continued with its beauty and challenges. Leo grew up hearing stories about his grandmother Sarah and his great-grandmother Gable, developing the same generous character that defined the family. The Reunion House became the largest family reconnection organization in the country. Julian, now 60, passed the executive leadership to Ethan, remaining as honorary chairman. Dad, I have a proposal I want to make, Ethan said during a meeting. Go ahead. How about we write a book telling our story? It could help many people going through similar situations. Julian became thoughtful. Do you think our story can really help other people? I'm sure of it. How many times have people come to us saying they were inspired by our experience? It was true. The story of Julian and Ethan had become known nationally, inspiring many other cases of reconnection. But how do we tell it without exposing too much of our intimacy? We focus on the lessons, not the personal details, on the process of forgiveness, of rebuilding, of overcoming. Claire supported the idea. You have an important message. It's never too late to start being a family. The book, Encounter at the Cemetery, A Story of Love and Forgiveness, was published 2 years later. It became a national and international bestseller, translated into 15 languages. Dad, look at this, said Ethan, showing a letter. It's from a father in Germany who found his son after reading our book. Julian was moved. His personal story was helping families all over the world. Leo, now 8 years old, felt proud whenever he saw the book in stores. Grandpa, you're famous. We're not famous, my grandson. We are blessed to be able to help other people through our experience. And can I help too when I grow up? Of course you can. This is a family mission. Leo smiled with the same green eyes that characterized 3 generations of Sterlings. Years later, when Leo was 15, the same age Ethan was when he found Julian, the family received a special visitor. It was Richard Vance, who had served his prison sentence and wanted to make a visit of reconciliation. Julian, I know I don't deserve to be received here, but I needed to ask for forgiveness in person. Julian looked at Ethan and Leo, who were present. Richard, we forgave you a long time ago. We hold no grudge. But I caused so much suffering. And through that suffering, we found our life's mission, Ethan added. Unintentionally, you contributed to us helping thousands of families. Richard began to cry. You are better people than I ever was. Leo approached. Uncle Richard, Grandpa always says that every mistake can turn into a lesson if we know how to learn the right one. The wisdom of the third generation surprised even Julian. Leo is right, said Julian. What matters is not the mistake that was made, but what we do afterward to make amends and grow. Richard left the visit transformed. Months later, he became a volunteer in a project assisting former inmates, using his own experience to help others reintegrate into society. Dad, said Ethan after the visit, sometimes I'm amazed by the human capacity to forgive and start over. It's what your mother most wanted us to learn, that love is always stronger than resentment. Leo, who had watched the entire conversation with Richard, asked a profound question. Grandpa, if you can forgive someone who did so much harm, does that mean anyone can be forgiven? Julian thought carefully before answering. My grandson, forgiveness doesn't mean accepting the wrong they did. It means freeing our hearts from the weight of hurt. Some people can be forgiven, others need consequences, but we can always choose not to carry anger in our hearts. I understand. It's like Mrs. Gable used to say, forgiveness is a gift we give ourselves. Julian smiled. Leo had understood a lesson that many adults take decades to learn. When Leo turned 18, he surprised the whole family with an announcement during his birthday dinner. Grandpa, Dad, Mom, I've decided what I want to study in college. What? They asked in unison. Psychology. I want to specialize in family therapy. I want to continue your work, but in a different way. Julian was moved. The family mission would continue with the next generation, but with an even more specialized professional approach. You have our full approval, said Ethan. And our pride, Julian added. Claire hugged her son. You'll be a wonderful psychologist. You have all the necessary sensitivity. Leo graduated with honors in psychology, specializing in systemic family therapy. At 25, he was already recognized as one of the best family therapists in the country. Grandpa, said Leo during one of his visits, I want to propose an expansion for the reunion house. What kind of expansion? Besides reuniting families, what if we offered therapy to help those families adapt after the reunions? The idea was brilliant. Many families manage to reunite but struggle to rebuild relationships after years of separation. It's perfect, said Ethan. It completes the cycle of our work. Julian, now 70, felt proud to see how each generation brought unique contributions to the family mission. The reunion house transformed into a complete complex. It located families, mediated reunions, and offered therapeutic support for rebuilding relationships. Dad, you know something, said Ethan one afternoon. Of course. Sometimes I wonder if our story wasn't planned by a greater force. Every piece fit perfectly for us to get here. Julian agreed. Your mother always said there are no coincidences, only synchronicities. I think she was right. Leo, who was present for the conversation, added, and the best part is that our story continues. Every family we help, every reunion we facilitate, every therapy session I conduct is an extension of your meeting in that cemetery. Julian felt a profound peace. His life had found purpose, meaning, transcendence. What began as a personal tragedy had transformed into a mission impacting thousands of lives. Do you know what makes me proudest? Said Julian. What? Asked Ethan and Leo. It's not the organization's success, nor the public recognition, not even the money we raise to help families. It's the fact that you two have become men of integrity, generosity, capable of loving and forgiving. Ethan and Leo were moved by his words. That's the family legacy, said Ethan. Each generation passes on to the next the values that truly matter. And I will pass it on to my children too, promised Leo. Julian smiled, thinking of the great-grandchildren he would yet come to know. The family would keep growing, the mission would keep expanding. That night, alone in the bedroom that was once silent and empty, Julian silently gave thanks for all he had achieved. He looked at the photos of Sarah, Ethan as a child, Mrs. Gable, Ethan as an adult, Claire, Leo, the whole family he had built. Sarah, he whispered. We did it. Our son became a wonderful man, has a beautiful family, is changing the world. Thank you for raising him with so much love." In that moment, he felt a peace he had never experienced before. It wasn't just the satisfaction of a duty fulfilled, but the certainty that his life had had purpose, meaning transcendence. At 75, Julian remained active at the reunion house, but now more as an advisor than an executor. Ethan ran the operation masterfully, Leo coordinated the therapeutic side, and Claire handled the most delicate cases. One morning, Leo arrived with news that made Julian's heart leap with joy. "Grandpa, Claire and I are expecting a baby." Julian burst into tears of happiness. He would be a great-grandfather. The family would keep growing. "Is it a boy or a girl?" "It's still too early to tell, but regardless of the gender, we've already decided on the name." "What?" "If it's a girl, she'll be named Sarah, in honor of her great-grandmother. If it's a boy, he'll be named Julian, in honor of his great-grandfather." Julian cried even more intensely. To see his name perpetuated through the generations was an honor he never imagined having. "Are you sure?" he managed to ask through the tears. "Absolutely," replied Leo. "You are the patriarch of this family, the man who turned pain into love, abandonment into reunion. She deserves to have her name remembered forever." The child was born 9 months later, a beautiful baby girl with the distinctive green eyes of the family. Sarah Sterling Bennett, carrying her great-grandmother's name and the promise to continue the family tradition of love and generosity. Julian held his great-granddaughter in his arms and felt an emotion even more intense than when he first met Leo. "Hello, little Sarah," he whispered. "You were born into a very special family. You will grow up surrounded by love and learn the importance of caring for other families too." The baby opened her green eyes and seemed to look directly at her great-grandfather, as if she understood every word. "Look at that," said an emotional Leo. "She has the same penetrating gaze that characterizes our family." Julian nodded, too moved to speak. In the following years, little Sarah grew up in an environment of love even more intense than the previous generations. She had 4 adults completely devoted to her well-being: her parents, her grandfather, and her great-grandfather. By the age of 3, she was already joining the visits to the reunion house, playing with other children and unconsciously absorbing the family values. "Great-grandpa," she asked one day, "why are there so many people crying happily here?" Julian smiled. It was exactly the same question Leo had asked at her age. "Because they are reuniting with people they love very much, little one." "How did you find Grandpa Ethan?" "That's a long story, my princess. Do you want great-grandpa to tell it?" The girl's green eyes sparkled with curiosity, exactly like Leo's had years before. Julian began to tell the story for the 4th time. He had told it to Ethan as an adult, then to Leo as a child, then to Leo as a teenager when he wanted more details, and now to little Sarah. "And then you became family forever?" she asked at the end. "Family forever and ever," confirmed Julian. "And am I family forever too?" "You too, my princess, for all of forever." Sarah hugged her great-grandfather with the same intensity that Leo and Ethan did. The unconditional love was perpetuating through the generations. When Sarah turned 5, Julian was 80 years old, still lucid and active, but beginning to feel the weight of age. "Leo," he called his grandson one day, "I need to talk to you about something important." "What is it, Grandpa?" "I want you to know that I am at peace with everything we've built. If my time comes, I want you to take care of continuing the mission." Leo was moved. "Grandpa, you still have many years ahead of you." "I hope so, but I want to have everything in order. The reunion house must continue to operate regardless of any one of us." "You can rest easy. Ethan and I have already structured everything so the organization is sustainable for generations." "And little Sarah?" "She will grow up knowing her history, her values, her mission. When it's her time, she will choose if she wants to continue the family's work." Julian smiled, satisfied. He had planted a tree whose fruit would continue to be harvested for many generations. 2 years later, Julian had a minor health issue that left him hospitalized for a few days. Nothing serious, but enough to bring the whole family together around him. "Don't worry," he said from the hospital bed. "It was just a scare. I still have a lot to do here." Ethan, now 52, held his father's hand. "Dad, you know you can count on us for anything, right?" "I know, son. And you know you can count on me, too, for as long as I am here." Leo, 35, added, "Grandpa, you've already done more for this family and for so many others than anyone could do in an entire lifetime." Little Sarah, 7 years old, climbed onto the hospital bed and hugged her great-grandfather. "Great-grandpa, I love you so much. You can't leave yet." Julian held his great-granddaughter carefully. "I'm not leaving as long as you need me here, Princess." Julian recovered completely and returned home determined to make the most of every moment with his family. "You know what I want to do?" he said one morning. "What?" everyone asked. "I want to go back to the cemetery where it all began. It's been a long time since we all went there together. The whole family went. Julian, Ethan, Claire, Leo, and little Sarah. They visited the graves of Sarah and Mrs. Gable, bringing fresh flowers. "Sarah," said Julian aloud, "I've brought our family to meet you. Our son Ethan has become a wonderful man. Claire takes care of him as you would. Leo is our grandson, a brilliant psychologist who helps families. And this little one is our great-granddaughter who carries your name and your beauty." Little Sarah placed flowers on her great-grandmother's grave. "Hi, Grandma Sarah. I'm your great-granddaughter. Great-grandpa Julian talks about you every day." Julian was moved to see the child talking naturally with the great-grandmother she had never met. "Mrs. Gable," Julian continued, "thank you for taking care of Ethan when I couldn't. Without you, none of this would have been possible." Ethan also spoke. "Mom, I hope you're proud of our family. We managed to turn your passing into a mission of love. The cemetery, which once represented pain and separation, now symbolized continuity, gratitude, and peace." Back home, Julian felt renewed. The visit had been cathartic, closing cycles and opening perspectives. "Dad," said Ethan, "you look younger after the visit to the cemetery. It's good to go back to the roots to remember how we got here." Leo agreed. "And to see how we turned a place of sadness into a place of gratitude." Little Sarah, who had been thoughtful during the trip, asked a question. "Great-grandpa, do Grandma Sarah and Mrs. Gable know we're helping other families?" "I'm sure they know, Princess. And they are proud." "When I grow up, can I help too?" "Of course you can. If you want, you'll be very welcome." Julian smiled, thinking the family mission was secured for at least one more generation. In the following months, Julian dedicated himself intensely to documenting everything he had learned over the years. He wrote letters to Ethan, Leo, and Sarah to be opened at important moments in their lives. He also organized all the documents for the reunion house, ensuring the organization had the structure to continue functioning indefinitely. "Dad, are you preparing for something?" asked Ethan, noticing the intense activity. "I'm preparing to live each day intensely," replied Julian, "getting things in order so that, when my time comes, you have everything you need to continue." "But there's no need to rush. It's not rushing, son, it's responsibility. A patriarch should leave everything organized for the family." Ethan understood. Julian wasn't preparing to leave, but to live fully each moment he had left. On Julian's 85th birthday, the family organized a special party. Not just relatives, but hundreds of people whose families had been reunited through the reunion house. "Mr. Julian," said a lady during the party, "you saved my family. After being separated from my daughter for 15 years, I managed to find her through you." "I didn't save it," replied Julian. "It was the love you already felt for each other. I just helped you find each other. Even so, thank you for existing." Julian was moved by the testimonials. Hundreds of people thanked him for having their families reunited. "Dad," said Ethan during his speech, "you turned your personal pain into a universal mission. That is what defines a true hero." Leo added, "And you taught us that family isn't just those who share the same blood, but those who share the same love." Little Sarah climbed onto the stage and handed a drawing to her great-grandfather. "Great-grandpa, I drew our family. Look, there's you, Grandpa Ethan, Daddy, Mommy, me, and up here in the sky are Grandma Sarah and Mrs. Gable watching over all of us." Julian looked at the drawing with tears in his eyes. The 9-year-old child had perfectly captured the essence of his family, people united by love, caring for one another, protected by the memory of those who had passed on. "It's the most beautiful drawing I've ever received in my life, Princess." That night, after all the guests had left, Julian sat in the garden where so many important conversations had happened over the years. Ethan joined him. "Dad, what are you thinking about?" "I'm thinking about how blessed I am. I have a wonderful family, work that makes a difference in people's lives, and the health to enjoy it all." "And what else?" "I'm thinking about your mother. How proud she would be to see what we built from our meeting with you." "Do you think she planned all this somehow?" Julian thought for a moment. "I think she planted seeds of love in your heart that bloomed when they reached me. And those seeds keep blooming through Leo and Sarah. That's a beautiful way to see things. It's the only way that makes sense to me." They sat in silence, watching the stars and reflecting on the journey that had brought them there. Julian lived 3 more intense and full years. He saw little Sarah grow and develop the same family sensitivity to help others. He witnessed the birth of another great-grandchild, Julian Jr., and had the privilege of holding him in his arms. "Hello, little Julian," he whispered to the baby. "You were born into a very special family. You will learn the importance of loving without limits and helping without expecting anything in return." At 88 years old, Julian passed away in his sleep, exactly like Mrs. Gable. A gentle departure, surrounded by his family's love. The funeral was a celebration of life. Thousands of people attended to pay tribute to the man who had dedicated the last 30 years of his life to reuniting families. "My father didn't just give me life," Ethan said during the eulogy. "He taught me how to live it with purpose. He didn't just love me, but taught me how to love. He didn't just build a family, but inspired thousands of other families to reunite." Leo also spoke. "My grandfather proved that it's never too late to start over, that love is stronger than any separation, that forgiveness frees the one who forgives more than the one who is forgiven." Little Sarah, now 12, read a letter she had written. "Great-Grandpa Julian, thank you for teaching me that family is the greatest treasure that ever was, is, and ever will be in the world." Julian was buried in the same cemetery where it all began, beside the graves of Sarah and Mrs. Gable. The 3 pillars of the family finally reunited for eternity. But the story didn't end there. The reunion house continued operating under the direction of Ethan and Leo. Little Sarah grew up determined to study law to help families in an even broader way. Julian Jr., the great-grandson who bore his name, grew up hearing stories of his great-grandfather and developing the same family sensitivity. 5 years after Julian's passing, the reunion house had already facilitated more than 5,000 family reunions. The organization expanded to other countries, taking Julian's mission to the entire world. "Dad," said Sarah, now 17, to Leo, "I want to continue Great-Grandpa's work, but in a different way." "How so?" "I want to study international law and create laws that protect the right of families to reunite anywhere in the world." Leo was moved. The 4th generation of the family was finding its own way to contribute to the mission. "Your great-grandfather would be so proud to know you want to turn our family mission into worldwide public policy." "It's the way I found to honor his memory and Grandma Sarah's." Lucas, now 65, was also moved by his granddaughter's plans. "Sarah, you represent the natural evolution of everything that started in that cemetery 40 years ago." The young woman smiled with the same green eyes that had characterized the family for 4 generations. "And it's just the beginning, Grandpa. Imagine how many families we can help if we can change laws all over the world." It was exactly the kind of big dream Julian would have fully supported. At the cemetery, on a sunny Sunday marking 5 years since Julian's passing, the whole family gathered for a special tribute. "Great-grandfather Julian," said Sarah aloud, "I want you to know your mission continues. Each of us has found a way to contribute. Lucas through administration, Leo through therapy, me through laws, and Julian Jr. through the technology he's developing to facilitate family searches." Little Julian, now 5, placed flowers on the 4 graves. "Hi, heaven people. We're still taking care of families down here." The child's simplicity moved everyone present, Back at home, the family gathered in the room where so many important decisions had been made. "You know what amazes me most about our story?" asked Lucas. "What?" everyone replied. "How each generation found a unique way to contribute. Grandpa Julian through love and organization, Leo through therapy, Sarah through laws, Julian Jr. through technology. It's because the mission is bigger than any one of us individually," observed Leo. Sarah agreed. "Each era has its own challenges and opportunities. Our responsibility is to adapt the family mission to the present times." Little Julian, who had been quiet, asked a question. "And when I grow up, will I find my way to help families too?" "Of course you will, my love," replied Claire. "Each of you has a special gift to contribute." "What's my gift?" Leo knelt to the boy's height. "We don't know yet, son. But when you grow up, you'll discover it. And when you do, we'll support you in everything." Julian Jr. smiled, satisfied with the answer. That night, before bed, Sarah opened one of the letters her great-grandfather had left for her. It was marked to be opened when she turned 18, but that was just a month away. "My dear great-granddaughter Sarah, if you are reading this letter, it means you have found your passion and are ready to begin building your own path in life. I want you to know I am immensely proud of the woman you have become. Your determination to help families through laws is exactly the kind of evolution our mission needed. Always remember, you are not just continuing the family's work. You are creating your own legacy, your own mark on history. Use the values you learned with us, but adapt them to your time and your opportunities. Tomorrow's world will be different from today's, and you will be one of the people responsible for building it better. Trust your intuition, be courageous in your decisions, but never forget that love for family must always come first. You were born for great things, my princess. Go and change the world. With eternal love, Great-Grandfather Julian P.S. In the safe in my office are documents about properties I left specifically to fund your studies and your future projects. Use this resource to amplify your ability to help families all over the world." Sarah finished reading with tears in her eyes and a smile on her face. Her great-grandfather, even after his passing, was still taking care of the family. End of the story. This was a fictional story created to touch our hearts. Now tell us what you thought. Do you believe forgiveness can truly transform lives? Share your experiences about family and overcoming challenges in the comments. If this story touched your heart, please like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other heartfelt stories we've prepared with great care for you.